Welcome to Employment Law This Week. I'm George Whipple. Employers are faced with many critical choices as their workforce transitions back to the workplace. The chief legal officer has a key leadership role to play as a company weighs its decisions and risks. I'm joined today by Lorenzo from the Chief Legal Officer Program at Deloitte and David Garland from the Labor and Employment Practice at Epstein, Becker, Green.
Lori, let's start with you. When a company is thinking about transitioning back to work, how should the chief legal officer look at his or her role?
It's likely the CLO is already part of a multidisciplinary executive team assembled to address response and recovery. And in the context of that team, the CLO should take a leading role in helping their colleagues understand the regulatory frameworks and the implications of decisions as they relate to the various levels of legal risk.
Hey, David, the really big question is, should employees return to work or should they continue to work from home? And how does the chief legal officer get in front of this problem?
Well, the starting point is what's permissible by the state and the locality in which the company is doing business. That's where we look first. Then, once we understand what that framework provides, what is important is looking at what worked successfully remotely during this period where we've all been working remotely from home, or many of us have been working remotely from home, and identify what's worked and what hasn't worked. And then, as part of that process, document what's been successful and what hasn't been.
What about the chief legal officer's own team? What are the thoughts about the legal department?
George, before COVID, we had the opportunity to survey a number of legal departments on this very question. And many of them said that even 3 years from the point at which we asked, they anticipated that they would not be on fully virtual work schedules. And many of them said they would probably only want 1 or 2 days out of the office. Post-COVID, our anecdotal touch base with chief legal officers and general counsel tells us that much of what lawyers do can and potentially will remain virtual. And so we're starting to see legal functions really thinking about the long-term virtual relationship.
One of the most important issues, facing all businesses today, Laura, is data protection. It's one of the main areas of concern, one of the main things that keep CLOs awake at night. This is especially problematic for people that work from home. How do you address that? What suggestions do you have in that area?
3 tips for that. First, roll out or reoffer cybersecurity training, including controls for communication and collaboration tools. Second, ensure that new and emerging threats are communicated quickly and that your staff has the tools and instructions they need to protect data and maintain privacy. Finally, prioritize the preservation of attorney-client privilege.
Lori, what are some of the other areas that we need to be thinking about when people are working from home?
One of the areas we've seen intense focus is around leadership. So the relationship between employer and employee has changed because of the virtual nature of work, and the boundaries between work and life are in some cases dissolving. And fortunately, some of the prejudices against work from home are starting to dissolve as well. But all of that means that we need to think differently about our leadership competencies and the skills it takes to be an effective leader.
David, what are your thoughts?
Well, we also need to think very practically in terms of tax implications and immigration implications from the change in location where an individual is working, where someone may have commuted to a particular office and had a tax treatment associated with the work in that office. If he or she is working elsewhere in a different state, or even a different country, we need to take into account what are the tax implications of that change, as well as the immigration consequences. We also need to recognize that employment decisions such as furloughing employees may also have significant immigration consequences.
David, how about employees that are actually returning to the physical workplace?
George, I focus on 2 very important things. Protocols, having the proper safety protocols in place. And that can include a variety of different things, including physical measures, but also individualized accommodation issues. But equally important is having training of the managers, training to ensure that they act in compliance with the protocols that we've established. It's also important that our managers are trained to be aware that they cannot use health-related information, information they've learned about their employees as a consequence of the pandemic, when making employment-related decisions.
Lori, are there any first principles that CLOs should have in mind as they and their teams return to work?
Communication is the front runner on that. Clear and frequent communication helps to reassure your team that you have their best interests in mind, and also gives them some clarity when many things remain undecided, undetermined, or unknown.
Thank you both very much for being here. I found the discussion very enlightening. And thank you all very much for watching. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.